Seems you're ready to die.
Let me show you what ultimate power is.
Let's settle this.
Perfect.
Dragon Ball and Sonic have been constantly compared to one another, things like Super Saiyan and Super Sonic, or the Chaos Emeralds and the Dragon Balls, but some of the biggest comparisons come with the characters, stuff like Goku vs Sonic, Piccolo vs Knuckles, and the people we're talking about today, Shadow and Vegeta. Vegeta and Shadow are some of those praised characters when it comes to fiction, with both being seen as some of the best of the best when it comes to their character arcs. Many times, people like them even more than Goku vs Sonic. Now, it's pretty clear to see that both Shadow and Vegeta, even despite what Izuka might tell you, are somewhat similar.
Both started out as villains for entirely different reasons. They would then meet the main character and battle them, both of them being widely changed by this battle. Shadow, he didn't see Sonic as a lookalike anymore, he saw him as a genuine beast, eventually considering him to be the ultimate life form. Compare this to Goku and Vegeta. Goku and Vegeta fighting originally, and Vegeta thinking that he was nothing more than a low-class Saiyan. Only within as time went on, Vegeta would slowly start to see Goku in a better and better light, respecting him and outright calling him #1. But also being impacted by some of the other casts as well. However, the main impact that they had was Maria for Shadow and Bulma for Vegeta. Maria would put Shadow on this whole revenge arc, but after Shadow realized Maria's true wants, he changed for the better. With Bulma and Vegeta, Vegeta would eventually have kids with them, while Vegeta would definitely not care about them in the beginning. As the years went by, the relationship grew to the point that Vegeta would genuinely throw away everything for Bulma. His final explosion speech, he literally only calls out Trunks, Bulma, and Goku, which are his biggest impacts in his life.
And one big comparison I actually really like a lot is the Doom Powers and Ultra Ego / Monge and Vegeta to an extent. Both of these are their past coming to haunt them, but instead of falling back to the past, they would eventually grow and become newer people. Vegeta realizing that he can't be the same destroyer that he was many years ago, and Shadow realizing that he cannot let anger or revenge lead him anymore, so they use these powers in order to help out the others in need. The point is, Vegeta and Shadow have a lot more similarities than many people might think. These characters are great and have a ton to analyze about them, but we do not care about that. We want to see them fight! So what are the rules for this fight? Basically, anything canon goes. So for Shadow, he'll get the games, IDW, and Sonic X. And Sonic X, while not actually canon, it's literally just Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. It doesn't really contradict me. Whereas Vegeta would get the Dragon Ball manga, the Dragon Ball Z anime. Some people might ask me if I'm using filler, and I'll use a little bit of filler. Toriyama himself says that filler is canon to Dragon Ball, so we'll be using it too. Super, both manga and anime will be used, and Dragon Ball Kakarot, which is also stated to be canon. Also, Shadow and Vegeta will be given any of their arsenal and any of their abilities. So Shadow gets the emeralds, and Vegeta gets an earring.
Do you notice me? Do you notice me? Yeah, yeah. I just wanna know, shawty, do you notice me?
So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, Sonic and power scaling has been a little bit iffy throughout the decades. Some say that Sonic is stronger than God himself, and some would say that Sonic wouldn't even be a slave in my empire. I'm sorry, I just love that meme so much.
Are you sure?
Jokes aside, it's pretty contentious. Now, as you all know on this channel, I'm right and you're wrong. So here's what I say. Now, one big important part that we need to talk about first is Sonic getting stronger over time. Now, a big part of Sonic is Sonic will fight a boss in super form, and then in a later game he'll fight him in his base form. And Shadow is no exception to this rule. For example, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails have to fight Metal Overlord, with Sonic having to go super and having to give Tails and Knuckles super as well. And it took basically 3 super tier characters in order to beat it. However, fast forward, and Shadow by himself was able to beat Metal Overlord, but seemingly barely any difficulty. So this is a very big trend, it's not like anything inconsistent either. So how strong would Shadow be? Now, the first thing that we need to do to scale him to Sonic. Sonic and Shadow are said to be equal, so anything that Shadow can do, Sonic can do, and vice versa. First of all, Sonic was able to beat Ultimate Emerald. Ultimate Emerald had the power of the final Egg Blaster in his body. Now, the final Egg Blaster was able to destroy star clusters across space, which would take around multi-solar system levels of power in order to do. Basically, he destroyed our solar system multiple times over, and Sonic beat him, canonically, in 30 seconds, meaning that Sonic would casually be multi-solar system levels of power in his base form, and Shadow should just outright scale to this. Now, some people might say, oh, well, this might be inconsistent. Well, may I introduce you to the Egg Dragoon, something that Eggman would state is his ultimate weapon. Now, some people might be a little cheeky, they might be a little goofy, they'll try saying, like, Sonic in his base form should be able to beat Solaris. However, there's nothing that really proves that, because in the most recent game, Shadow fights Mephiles, which shouldn't be anywhere near Solaris, so saying that Sonic and Shadow should scale to Solaris and base is a little bit of a stretch. There is statements like Infinite being stated to be the strongest Sonic villain of all. However, not only could it just be like advertisement hyping, like our burgers are the best, even though the burgers taste like shit, but also consider the fact that in advertisements they rarely ever talk about Sonic 06 at all. Again, they want to make sure this game never exists. So, case in point, I don't think there's going to Solaris in base. In Super though, that's a different story. Now Shadow has a couple performances, but really, we only really need to talk about one, which is Super Shadow. Super Shadow uses the 7 Chaos Emeralds and basically buffs him to a point that becomes invulnerable. Now, in order to know how strong Super Shadow is, we need to talk about the cosmology. Now, cosmology is basically like what exists in this fictional verse. Sonic verse has a lot of worlds, so let's get into it. So first of all, we have Sonic's universe. It should be pretty similar to our universe. Some people say that it might be infinite, however, this is an assumption.
Messing with the time stream. There should only be that one, right?
Not necessarily. Time is just one dimension of reality. Within the endless possibilities of space, there could be an infinite number of other Sonics out there.
Tails himself, even though he is super intelligent, doesn't really confidently know if it is infinite or not. So, we're going to be on the safer side and say that this isn't an infinite universe. Next up is Blaze's universe, which should be equal in size to Sonic's universe. They're literally said to be parallel. In Sonic Chaos Guide, special stages are also said to be parallel universes. However, there's no indication that all special stages are separate realms. So, for right now, we'll just say it's just one parallel universe, which are the Arabian Nights from Sonic and the Secret Ring, and the world from Camelot from Sonic and the Black Knight. Now, these two realms should just straight up be universes. There is things like the Lost Prologue and the Night Palace, in which the Night Palace is said to be a Milky Way, which is a galaxy.
For Night Palace, however, there is a statement that says that it's infinite. However, this is in a Prima guide, which is not licensed by Sega, making it pretty unofficial. So you can easily argue that this wasn't really Sega's intent in the first place.
Next up, we got the Shower Space, which I know, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I'll come into your house. The shower space are broken fragments of the original universe, with each shower space being at least galaxy level, due to things like stars and nebulas in the worlds. Cyberspace is an alternate dimension that holds information of the ancients, being advanced to a point that Eggman himself is like, yo, these niggas might be like cracked or something. It's so advanced that it makes basically Sonic's memories into reality, and it's beyond quantification as it has countless amounts of data. Next up, you have, oh brother, Imaginary World. Imaginary World was in Sonic's Shuffle, and is an alternate universe where all dreams become reality. Some dreams vary in size, that can be planetary or even universal. Now, some people argue that it is an infinite 4D space, but some people also say that it isn't an infinite 4D space. Now, to give Imaginary World credit, there's literally a stage in the game called 4th Dimensional Space. However, there's also a guidebook that says it too. However, it isn't officially licensed by Sega. It means that it could very well be just not what Sega intended. However, considering the fact that they put 4th Dimensional Space literally in the game, I wouldn't be surprised if it was intentional. So now we've gone down to why Sonic's cosmology should have multiple universes, and even an infinite universe itself, Imaginary World. So how strong is Super Shadow? Super Shadow should easily be able to scale to people like Solaris, who Solaris is said to be a super dimensional being capable of destroying the entire Sonic cosmology. Now, some people might say, oh, well, all Hedgehogs need to be able to beat him. Okay, future fate here. I'm going to explain real quick why Sonic and Shadow get to Solaris. Number one, not only do Sonic and Shadow tank Solaris' attacks, but they clearly damage him. But on top of that, they broke Solaris' shell and was still able to damage him. The only reason why they didn't fully kill him was because he had regeneration, so Sonic and Shadow should scale regardless. But even if you don't think that they scale here, in Sonic Frontiers, the end literally thinks that he's the strongest of Sonic's opponents, which would include Solaris, as Sonic remembers the events of Sonic 06.
貴様をここで倒すって意気込んでたじゃないか。大世界のために貴様をここで撃つ。そんな記憶はないけど。さあ、そろそろレースの時間だ。楽しもうぜ。
And I know Ian Flynn's a little iffy with statements, but if you want to use his statement, he also says that the end is the most powerful thing ever. So there you have it. Now we know Shadow can scale to Solaris. How strong would Shadow be? Well, Solaris is said to do a few things. Number one, he was said to be a super dimensional being. Number two, he was said to be able to eat dimensions for lunch. And number three, he was said to be able to destroy the entire Sonic cosmology. Considering the fact that the entire Sonic cosmology would include Imaginary World and infinite 4D space, plus with all the universes in Sonic's world already, this would be either a low multiversal to a 5D level feat, and Shadow should easily scale to this. There are also things like the Eggman and Eggman Nega. Okay, come on everybody, let's be grown here. As they said they were going to create a universe that transcends all others by combining the Sonic world and the Blaze world. Now, you can argue that since we didn't really get to see it on screen, it may not count. However, to give the benefit of the doubt here, plus the fact that we already have Solaris being 5th dimensional as well, you can easily just argue them being 5th dimensional as well. So with all that we saw here, Shadow should be multi-solar system in base form, if not even higher, potentially in galaxy tiers. And for Super Shadow, he should straight up be multiversal to even 5D. But enough about strength. Let's get into speed. This is Sonic and Shadow's main category, come on. Now before we get into how fast these two are, we need to talk about their debuffs. Night Palace isn't infinite, so Sonic crossing it wouldn't be infinite speed. You can also argue that Sonic went through like a specific door that allowed him to travel, so rather than him being infinite in speed, he could have just used like a portal or something. Then we get to Sonic Generations. A lot of people argue that Sonic was running through time, which can be fair. However, you can also argue that this is just something that Sonic and Classic Sonic resisted, as Tails and Classic Tails, and many of the other characters who got frozen by time were now brought back in time, were able to walk around as if nothing happened. So you can easily argue this is just some type of resistance. Now on to the speed feats. The first big one is scaling to Solaris. Wow, big whoop. Solaris was able to shine his light across the universe, which can get up to 77 quadrillion times the speed of light. Now, you can argue that it could be infinite if you think the cosmology is infinite in size, and we have things like Imaginary World, which is infinite in and of itself. However, there is no proof that Sonic cosmology itself is infinite. We also have the time mirror, which also affected the universe, which would be 122 to 183 quadrillion times the speed of light. Now, if you include different timelines, it can go up into the quintillions of times the speed of light. However, you don't really see a lot of different timelines in Sonic Generations. And even Gerald explains how we got to see things like Chaos Island for Shadow. Plus the fact that we didn't even get to see things from the Soul Dimension or special stages. So overall, I'd say 122 to 182 quadrillion times the speed of light is a safer option. However, Shadow does have some quintillion feats that you can scale him to. For example, in Sonic Prime, there are 2 quintillion feats, which are the crunch of the Shadowverse and the expansion of the verse itself, both of which are quintillions the times the speed of light. Now, while nobody in base form should scale, super form should more than enough scale. Meaning Shadow in his super form should be quintillions the times the speed of light. You can argue infinite and immeasurable speed, but it is a little iffy, so keep it in mind. So that's it for Shadow. Shadow is a very, very powerful character, and while some people be definitely waking him a lot more than I'm waking him right now, you can definitely see why people do it in the first place.
Settle this.
Now first, before we get into Vegeta's huge shtick, let's talk about the Dragon Ball cosmology first. Now the Dragon Ball cosmology is a giant ball which is divided into 2 halves. The first half is the realm of the living with outer space and the demon realm, and the upper half is the other world with the afterlife, where in the middle there's hell. Based on these multiple realms, Universe 7 should be an enormous structure at least twice as large as our own universe, with the multiverse having 12 universes all being in equal size to each other. Now, Dragon Ball also has multiple universes with its own timelines, and those timelines have their own universes. Now, this alone makes the whole Dragon Ball scale obscenely absurd. However, that's a whole video for another day. Point is that Dragon Ball should have a lot of universes. Then we get into the infinite scale. Now, most of these are pretty much from the Daizenshuu. Now, Toriyama himself has stated that these are more reliable than him. And something you might say, oh, well, you didn't give Tails to infinite stuff, why would you get Dragon Ball? Well, considering that we're literally getting the thumbs up from the creator himself, it's very clear Dragon Balls is a lot more likely in this situation. But as you can see on the screen, Dragon Ball worlds are infinite. Pretty simple. Then we get into the dimension of strange swirling lights. This is said to be a super dimensional world that Gogeta and Broly not only broke into, but broke in general. And the specific goal by the production crew was to make higher dimensional imagery. So this should be on a tier above, or likely being 5D. So now we settled that, let's scale Vegeta. Vegeta should be able to scale to Goku, who straight up shook the entire world when clashing with Beerus. This should straight up just be either low multiversal to straight up multi-plus if we take the infinite worlds into consideration. Now some people like using the World of Void feat, however it only stated to be an infinite nothingness, and plus the infinite itself isn't really even an accurate translation. Then we get into what I consider to be the most important feat, that being the Gogeta and Broly feat. Gogeta and Broly not only shattered into the dimension of strange swirling lights, but they destroyed the dimension and destroyed space-time just by being themselves. So Vegeta should straight up be multi-plus to even 5D. Now for the people asking, wait a minute, you're scaling Vegeta to Gogeta? That doesn't make sense. Now this would be true if we were using like Super Broly Vegeta, but we're using the most recent Vegeta, that being Superhero Vegeta. Granola wished himself to be the strongest in the universe, which would include Broly, and Vegeta basically beat the shit out of him. It was pretty much to the point that Vegeta would have won had it not been for him literally going through a mental breakdown. so Vegeta should upscale Gogeta, and thus being 5 deep. Now on to speed. For speed, Vegeta scales to shockwaves that Goku and Beerus did, which would flat be massively faster in light, plus to potentially even infinite levels of speed. Then we actually have a really good feat, which is the Spirit Bomb feat. In Dragon Ball Kakarot, Goku gathers energy for his Spirit Bomb pretty fast. This comes up to 490 quadrillion times the speed of light. And remember, Vegeta has confirmed multipliers for Super Saiyan, Super Saiyan 2, Super Saiyan 3s, and he has it now, and later forms. There's also some monster breaking into the other universe from the future timeline. This is a little iffy, so a person would use it. However, Goku himself says that he could have done something against Zamasu if he had Sensu Bean, and Jiren has been stated to be the strongest opponent that Super Sentai has ever seen, which would include Infinite Zamasu. And for another feat, Goku literally jumps into the future in the Dragon Ball Super anime in order to beat his time stop, which would not only probably be enough to beat time stop altogether, but also just makes Goku immeasurable. For Vegeta, at the end of the series, be multiversal, and then 5D potentially, with speed going into quadrillions times the speed of light, but then has multipliers to make him even faster. And he also has infinite and immeasurable arguments, depending on what you believe. So Vegeta versus Xiao for both is not going to be a walk in the park. So who will win this fight? Let's find out. Time out, time out. Tweet, tweet, tweet. We gotta look at viewer time. So before I started editing the episode, I decided to ask Twitter on who they thought won. Along with that, I did a poll for who would win Vegeta versus Shadow. So first, we're going to look at some of the comments, and then we're going to look at the poll, and then we're going to get into the fight. And then see if they're right. If they win, they get an all-expense-paid trip to Miami. And if they picked wrong, they're going to die. Let's get started. This one comes from my good friend, Nigga Pokemon 333. And he thinks that Xiao wins because he's stronger, faster, and how hacks is. Now, to be fair, I didn't really talk about Xiao's hacks, but he does have Chaos Control, which can stop time, teleport, etc. He basically warps the reality around him to do it. So yeah, that's a pretty good statement. He got some replies, so we'll look at them as well. Now, to be fair, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying not to go crazy on it, but we shall see. So for the replies, he was gassing me up, we niggas for real, we two pieces of pie. Some people thought that Shadow, isn't stronger. Some people thought that Vegeta could overrule his hacks. People are bringing up the Solaris feat. And hey, in the end, they'll be able to talk more about, what goes on and who wins and all that. Also, by the way, it's just unscripted, so there's going to be a lot more ums and ohs, so I'm sorry about that. Alright, so some people are saying Vegeta should win because he has endurance, and he has Ultra Ego, which allows him to take more damage, the more his attack potency increases, which is a good point. So, if Vegeta and Shadow are somehow equal in terms of their stats, which, they are, if you watch the analysis, they are. So, Vegeta does have a good chance of winning if Shadow doesn't, immediately kill him, There is another person that came up here and said, hey, Super Shado's invulnerability monster Arsenal could wear down Ultra Ego's main ability, and that's honestly a good point. Next up, most of the other comments are kind of just around the same too. People are saying things like, oh, both should be able to get to 5D or multi, and then some people were saying that Vegeta should be able to go through Xiao's hacks. Some people are saying that he couldn't, and another person, RJ Roger, my goat, they bring up the fact that they don't really buy any high argument for Shadow, which is fair. Power scaling is super subjective. We're not all going to agree on something. It just happens. I hope you leave this video seeing where I'm coming from, whether you agree with me or you're now agreeing with me, or if you still disagree with me. My point is to just show you what I think, and hopefully I can convince you. If you don't think so, I hope that you can still understand my method. But anyway, so they also bring up multipliers, which I think is also a very good point for Vegeta. Again, we're going to talk more about it later, but a lot of the whole feats are a lot better once you put in multipliers. And that's all I'm saying. Shadow wins as soon as Vegeta pulls out this pose. And I will say, the animation, Vegeta does actually use that pose. So I can't look at every post here since we have a lot here, but what I'll do is I'll fade some on screen, and y'all can see it while I'm talking about the rest of the stuff that's gonna happen. The last one I actually saw that was really interesting was Vegeta's Spirit Vision, which is actually a really good point. I didn't bring up in the analysis because I'm an idiot. That is actually a really good point, and some people are also saying that Vegeta had an edge in skill and experience, which is also a pretty fair point, because Xiao lived for 50 years, but he was in a fucking ice container for 50 years. Alright, I'm gonna let the comments run for a little bit. If you see yourself in the comments, type in the YouTube comments being like, yo, that's me, or if you didn't get that, you type in the YouTube comments, hey, Fade, I hate you, I hope you die. Now, with all the comments out the way, let's look at the poll. So, drum roll, please. With 48.1 versus 42.7%, which is a very close poll right here. I was super surprised. But 293 votes as well. Shadow barely edges out a victory against Vegeta by only a little bit. It actually is insane. I expected one or the other to just straight up just take the dub, but no, it was actually a very close one, so that was really cool. So now that we've gone through that, everyone, I would say that people think Shadow wins. We're going to give the viewers' vote to Shadow. So, will the viewers be correct? Will my viewers win and expense all pay trip to Miami, or will they die? Now, officially, let's find out.
It's like I said, I am the ultimate life form.
Yes, the stronger the opponent, the greater the thrill of the fight.
Very well. Let me show you what ultimate power is.
Come, I'll crush you into dust. Really done it.
Damn.
Now go! On it to You're outclassed! Death to all who oppose me! Control! Let's settle this!
Time to unleash the ultimate power! Chaos Spear!
Final Flash!
Time to step it up. Damn, not here.
You lose! Now to finish taking out the trash.
I can't die here.
Impossible!
The ultimate power!
Fool!
Whoa, such a cool fight. Yo, shout out Fade, man. God, man, that was corny. Anyway, Vegeta wins the fight. But why? Well, let's look at the stats. For starters, let's talk about strength. For finite ends, both of them should be around the low multiversal to multiversal ranges. However, while Shadow caps around 13 times universal, Vegeta should outright upskill the Battle of God's Feet and have multipliers on top of that, meaning that no matter what, Vegeta is likely going to be stronger than Shadow.
But what about speed? Shadow, he gets up to 733 quadrillions of times the speed of light, could potentially quintillions of times the speed of light if you give him some arguments. However, this wouldn't really hold out to Vegeta, be upscaling that from the Majin Buu saga, and then on top of that with the Super Saiyan multipliers and the God multipliers, plus the fact that we already have a ton of other feats from Super as well. Vegeta would just outright blitz the hell out of Shadow.
But what about infinite ends for both? For infinite ends, we have both Vegeta and Shadow scaling to around 5B. However, Vegeta's arguments are stronger overall, mainly due to things like consistent statements for the universes being infinite, and on top of that, them literally fighting in a 5th dimensional space, whereas Shadow really only has imaginary world, which can even be argued not to be 4th dimensional. However, ignoring that, both should be pretty equal when you use infinite ends. So what about their other abilities? Shadow has chaos control, however Vegeta can easily get around it, similar to Goku vs. Hit. But Vegeta's main trump card here is 4th Spirit Fission. 4th Spirit Fission should straight up allow Vegeta to steal the emeralds from Shadow, and at that point it's basically GG's. So at this point, not only will Vegeta be faster and stronger without infinite ends, but even if you want to use infinite scaling, Vegeta has more than enough abilities to take down Shadow for good. Also, before I forget, there's also Hakai, which could potentially erase Shadow from existence as well. And so the winner is the Prince of All Saiyans, Vegeta.
Super Vegeta!
I know, you're never gonna hear that again.